Good afternoon. Thanks for having me today. I just drove in from Hopkinsville, Kentucky this morning, and Kentucky's underneath a drought right now. So if we don't get rain by the end of this week, there's going to be some serious hurt across Kentucky. So please say a little prayer for some rain. I have some guests with me today. I have some interns, I have Emma and Jacob. Raise your hand. Thanks for joining us today. And Mr. Kane, thanks for the update. I started working on the Legacy Trail when I was a legislator. And we're so happy that not only you're in Scott County, but you're close enough with the new trail for us to put up a for hire sign along the way, because we're all looking for help as well on our farm as well. I'd like to cover a few issues today. Some folks that I don't think I know in the crowd. I grew up on a farm, and that was my very first school. Started working full time when I was 6 years old, working in tobacco. My dad allowed me to earn $1 an hour, so I was really fortunate for that. A lot of farm kids work for free, so I was really fortunate for that. My mom was a public school teacher. She taught for 30 years. She was a nurse. And so whenever my brother and I got injured on the farm, if she patched us up, there was no appeals process. You had to get right back out into the field and get back to work. And my dad still farms today. And we farm, on the map you just saw, we farm just north of that soccer complex that you saw. So we also farm in northern Fayette County as well. And speaking of my mom, Tim Parrott, is that right? My mom taught him in school, so thank you for, that's right. Thanks for sharing that with me. We appreciate that. My family came here in the 1780s after service in the Revolutionary War. I'm ninth generation, and there's a reason why people came to central Kentucky. This was the Bluegrass savanna. So this was the first highly fertile, high native grasses, arable land once you got past the mountains. And folks settled here. And for the longest time, Lexington was the largest city in the United States not sitting on a body of water, either a large river, a reservoir, etc. And so, we all heard that phrase from Daniel Boone that heaven must be a Kentucky kind of place, that this was described, this area of Kentucky was described to settlers and prospectors as Edenic, the Garden of Eden. And so it's a very special place, and there's special businesses and industries that thrive here that really give Lexington and the surrounding counties such an iconic reputation, not just around the nation, but around the world. When you add in our bourbon industry, thoroughbred and horse dominance around the world, agribusinesses that are located here as well, the mixture of both small and large farms, and a balance between urban development and preservation of rural heritage. This is a really special place, and it's something that's worth protecting because it's about a quality of life issue. Then you add in on top the high intensity of higher education in central Kentucky, obviously led by the land-grant University of Kentucky, and of course Transy and the others in the area as well. The amount of research that's done here is oftentimes overlooked. If you look at what's going on just in the equine industry, you basically have the equivalent of two MD Andersons right up the road from each other. And a lot of folks who I work with don't realize the power of higher education and research that's done here, because it's the reason why when Alltech has their conference, people from 90 countries come here. That is such a such a city based on hospitality, that when you add in all this stuff, that when I travel the world or travel around the United States, there's just something that's so unique about central Kentucky. And with the high growth rates, especially from a guy coming from Scott County, 21% growth rate in the past 10 years, highest in the state for the second decade in a row, it's important we have discussions about the future of all these assets that we have right here in central Kentucky. But before we get into that, COVID at this point has affected just about everybody in this room. It's a terrible disease. COVID rates are 10 times higher today than they were a year ago. A lot of folks don't realize that. Death rates are higher today than they were a year ago. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that there's really two groups that deserve accolades. Our healthcare heroes that continue to keep us safe in hospitals, long-term care facilities, nursing homes. But secondly, our farmers and agriculturalists. Because if you see what's going on in Venezuela right now, the conflict in Ukraine, starvation is real. Starvation is real in the 21st century. But the Kentucky farmer rose to the challenge. They didn't zoom it in. You can't zoom it in. Don't have telecommute days. And we had record-producing years in 2020 and 2021. And oftentimes, people take it for granted about where their food comes from. They just go to the grocery store. It's magically there. And so we have to step back. And COVID was one of those rare opportunities where our farmers got some much well-earned positive press about the role they play in our food chain. And something that we try to, in the ag community, we try to educate young folks about every day. But we were able, when restaurants were shut down, a lot of Kentuckians had to learn how to cook again, including myself. And so we've started gardening programs. The buy local movement is real. Our Kentucky Proud program is stronger than ever before. And so as we emerge out of COVID, we're trying to harness this local food movement as something that's permanent and something that's not a fad. That's something that's not a fad. And the best way we can do that is highlight our farmers markets. We have 173 of them right now. If your community is looking, I know the city of Lexington's getting ready to propose a big one here. If your community wants to upgrade their farmers market, we have a grant for that. We have a grant for that using the back to settlement dollars. But that's where it starts, is getting people connected back to their roots. And there's so many programs that we have to help support local food that we could spend all day on it. COVID also allowed us to look at some fractures in the food supply system as well. If you went to the grocery store just 2 years ago, you probably didn't have the exact cut of meat you're looking for, and you may have been limited on how much you can buy. And still today, there are quantity issues in some of our grocery stores. And it highlighted the dependence as a livestock state we have on Midwestern meat processors, where 4 companies control 85% of the processing in America. And so we decided to do something that I think was really bold. The Ag Development Board, which oversees our tobacco settlement dollars, we've invested over $7 million at this point into local meat processors. And when I was growing up, there was a butcher in every county. And we'd go in halvesies with another family on a steer, raise a steer, split the meat up, and that's how we fed ourselves. But that is such a unique and rare thing now. I think there is enough interest to bring that back. And so we have over 30 USDA inspected meat processing facilities in Kentucky that benefited from that program, as well as low interest loans. And Linda Rumke serves on our Kentucky Ag Finance Corporation. We'll talk about that in a little bit about why that's important. And so we're trying to make strategic investments now that hopefully, pandemic or no pandemic, Kentuckians buy into. And it really helps bolster the sense of community, one county at a time. And so there's a lot of opportunities. We're working with our school systems. I think you may have had a discussion about farm to table, farm to school earlier today. The biggest buyer of food in every county in Kentucky is the school system. Doesn't matter if you're talking about Robertson County that has a total of 2,400 people or Jefferson County. The biggest buyer of food, period, is the school system. And so imagine what we could do if our local schools made a 1, 2, or 3% commitment of buying local, what that would do to transform local agriculture. You would encourage farmers to maybe invest in a greenhouse or a high tunnel, expand the growing season, et cetera. And I think that there's a lot of interest in that, but at the end of the day, there's always price points that determine whether or not it's going to fit into a budget, of course. And so that's something we're trying to work on right now. Another thing we want to talk about in rural Kentucky that is a hard conversation is mental health. Suicide rates among farmers are higher than veterans. A lot of folks may not realize that. And one thing we've done working with UK and Southeast Center for Safety, U of L Nursing School, a plethora of other organizations, is that we have got funding in the budget as well as a $500,000 grant from USDA to have a rural Kentucky specific approach for mental health and suicide prevention. We have a whole division in my department that focuses on farm safety, preventing you from losing a limb and everything from sunburns to being safe on an ATV or tractors. We've started adding in a mental health day as well, and that's just the beginning. And so we've actually are developing an app as well. We've got community-oriented grants right now where we want to have a physical presence. We want those U of L nursing students to come out and take your blood pressure at a field day at a farm, but also to talk about, you doing okay? Have that friendly conversation. And farmers, we can be independent, stubborn people sometimes, and we don't want to ask for help. But this is a new awareness campaign called Raising Hope. If you want to Google that, we've got great resources. We're just getting started, and we're having a conversation that sometimes is tough to have in the first place. We have a bright spot in trade right now. Kentucky exports are up. American food exports are up. And our department has been very active on that. Just this year alone, I traveled to Dubai with with the United States Secretary of Agriculture, as well as Saudi Arabia, because the Kentucky Derby is a pretty big race. It's the best race in the world. Now, there's some other races out there where the first place prize, I think, in the Kentucky Derby is, I think, $3 million. I think that's the purse. 10, or 5. Okay, he's going with 5. Holloway Feed says 5. Well, when I was in Dubai, you saw products from Kentucky there because it was Kentucky horses winning the races. That's a $12 million race in Dubai. Over in Saudi Arabia, it's a $30 million race. And in the course of 20 minutes, I saw $75 million worth of Lexington horses, Central Kentucky horses, in 2 different barns. And we were there to review disease quarantine protocols to make sure that diseases that exist on the Arabian Peninsula don't make their way back here, or to the Irish, or to the Australians, or to the Japanese and the Chinese that are really getting big in racing. And so wherever you go in the world, you say you're from Kentucky, people ask you about bourbon, racehorses, and Colonel Sanders, right? And so we had such a strong head start compared to other states. Because when you say you're from Kentucky, people know. They might see it on a bottle in a bar. They might see it at a really nice day in Kentucky that's broadcast around the world, the Kentucky Derby. Or they might see it when they go out to eat with their family. And so we've got such a head start compared to other states. And so we're going to continue to put the gas pedal down. I was in England early this year. We helped negotiate, sit across the table from the head of their trade minister. And we helped reduce the 25% tariff on bourbon right now, which goes down to 0 later this week, actually. So we're doing our best to make sure we're pushing exports around the world that are agricultural in nature. Another thing that's going on right now is we're having and continue to have a serious approach towards reducing hunger in Kentucky. I don't have to tell you this, our rates are above national averages. 1 in 7 Kentuckians, adult age, food insecure. 1 in 5 K through 12 students, food insecure. And back in 2016, we started the Kentucky Hunger Initiative. It was a collaboration of everybody involved in that food production system, from the farmer who puts the seed in the ground, to our grocery stores, to our restaurants, to K-12, higher education, nutrition specialists, even chefs that teach people how to cook again. And so we didn't know a global pandemic would hit 4 years later, and thank God we were prepared for that. And so Kentucky's getting national recognition on how to address hunger, both in urban and rural areas. And we've changed the culture of giving, and now we have FFA and 4-H kids donating their prize-winning steers and hogs. We find a way to process that animal for free, and we're getting local food back into our food pantries. And that's something we got to continue to have a conversation about, because guess what? During COVID, food insecurity spiked by 30%, and a lot of Kentuckians who had jobs, who no longer had a job, went to the food bank for the first time in their life. And the rates are going back up again right now. And anyone guess why? Inflation and price of food. They can't afford food. Can't afford food. And so this is a very serious issue that in a state that has an abundance of food, with farmers that punch above their weight class, where we can raise cattle, raise livestock, raise crops, we still have a serious issue of hunger. And if you don't address nutrition, especially at a young age, you're affecting trajectories of fellow Kentuckians years down the road. A lot of academic research on this. And so we're continuing to work on that. Right now, during the summer, we have summer feeding sites. We have over 2,000 summer feeding sites around Kentucky. Any kid, no questions asked, can get a free meal. But we still have to promote it. Which brings me to the next thing, some challenges we're facing in ag. Number 1 is inflation, 40-year record high, rising interest rates as the Fed is overcorrecting by 75 points a couple weeks ago, something they should have addressed 6 months ago. And there's a whole generation of Kentuckians who did not farm or did not operate a business in the 1970s and 1980s, when true stagflation was affecting just about everything. I pulled the deed on my parents' very first farm a couple years ago, and the interest rate, I think, was 17%, and they got a good deal that day, okay? There's a lot of people out there that are leveraged who do not understand how serious of a situation and the probable recession that we're in right now. We'll get economic numbers in mid-July to see whether or not GDP grew or not. But the reason I bring this up is that if you look at the price of food, if you look at the price of fuel, or for our farm community, the price of diesel, it's going to affect everybody. That's going to get passed down to the consumer little by little by little. We also have input issues. We're going through a drought right now, supply chain issues, changing consumer habits. People are not eating the same types of food that they were just a couple of decades ago. In the farm community, the innovators are on the front end of that, capturing that market opportunity. There's some folks that need to adjust their business plans as well. In Frankfurt, we have some Frankfurt issues. There's continuation of what we think is going to be a positive thing with our tax code changing as well, but we've got to make sure there's protections in there for our farm community that other states already have, so we don't unintentionally shoot ourselves in the foot. We need to make sure that broadband actually gets done. There's plenty of money. There's been a lot of talk about it, very little action. Plenty of money. The legislature has appropriated $500 million in the past 2 years. We've got to get it out there. You add in USDA money, DOT money, others. It's time to get that done here in our state. We have a discussion about solar. I'm sure that will come up here in a second with some Q&A as well. The legislature did not pass a bill this session, but it's important that something gets passed next year. And I do know that the interim ag committee meetings and natural resource meetings are going to start working on this summer as well. Some other more recent issues is that we have a lot of investors buying up farmland in central Kentucky who don't live here, which is fine. We welcome FDI, foreign direct investment. But when a farm sells in Scott County 100 acres for $30,000 an acre that's zoned to agriculture by a guy in California who'd never stepped foot on the farm, the investment class is parking their money here. They're parking their money. And so for the younger generation or current farmers, you know what I'm about to say next, Spencer, you can't afford farmland by people who actually want to farm it. And if Frank Penn was here, he'd be going off on this. It's a big issue. It's a big issue that affordability of farmland in Kentucky, in central Kentucky, you can't buy it and pay it off by farming during your lifetime. And that's something we need to think about long term as well. The other big issue is the average age of a farmer in Kentucky is 62. Name another occupation where the average age is almost retirement age besides the United States Senate. Okay? Name another occupation. It's a serious issue. We guess that 1/3 of our farmers age 65 or older have yet to identify who's going to take over their operation. Have yet to identify that. And when you look at the estate planning side, the attorney in me, that's dangerous when you don't know what's going to happen. Because another thing that's affecting our farmland besides these 5-acre development lots or 40-acre development lots here in Fayette County is making sure that there is an avenue for the next generation to succeed. Because there's 5 Ds that break up family farms: death, disability, divorce, drinking, and drugs. Those are the 5 Ds that break up family farms. Farms that have been here in Kentucky 9 generations or longer. The first 3 can be mitigated by a proper estate plan. And there's a lot of folks who own land that still don't know what their estate plan is going to be. And assuming that your kids are just going to get along is not a plan, okay? That's a recipe for disaster, okay? It's lawsuits and land disputes. And if you spend generations building up an operation and not have an estate plan, you're risking it all. Because the tax man cometh no matter what. And you got to make sure that generations of hard work, and it's not just farmland, it's family-owned business on Main Street as well, capital gains tax, etc. The other thing I'd like to leave you with is that we are expecting the biggest transfer of land in American history since the Homestead Act. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 to $30 trillion worth of land will be transferred and assets transferred to the next generation. And so if you're a young person that didn't grow up on a farm, but yet you want to choose farming as a career, we have to have some innovation. And Billy Van Pelt, not sure if he's here, but American Farmland Trust they're probably on the forward edge of this. We're coming up with some action items about having long-term leases, opportunities for folks, even small acreage, to get them started. And that's something we are really, really excited about. So in closing, we have to do something that our grandparents did. My grandfather fought in World War II. He picked up a war bride on the way back home from Australia. And his generation doubled the amount of food we produce in America, using only 76% of the land that we used to farm and 22 million less workers. Apply that to your business. You double your output with only 3/4 of the equipment you're using, et cetera, and with 22 million less laborers, okay? Our grandparents did that. We have to do it again, and we have to be smart about it. We have to have discussions about sustainability, environmental issues, that they're not making dirt anymore. You've got to make sure that we have a solid, smart plan for protecting assets for the future. Because as the world population continues to increase, we're at 7.5 billion right now. We're going to hit 9.5, 10 billion over the next 20 or 30 years. There's going to be a squeeze on food production worldwide. Other countries like China are buying up 10,000 acre sections of land at a time in Africa right now. And in Brazil, they're building the roads in Brazil right now so that they have food security for the years to come. We need to make sure that we have a plan as well. But I have faith in the Kentucky farmer because we're good at what we do. Well, thanks for your time today. If I could be of any help to you, let me know. Department of Ag plays a big role. I'd like to remind folks we're not just agriculture, but if you were to weigh your truck on the side of the interstate, sell gold at a pawn store, if you were to buy a bag of mulch, if you were to buy any chemical in Kentucky, if you were to ride a Ferris wheel, go down a zip line or rent an inflatable for your backyard birthday party, that's our department playing a consumer protection bill. So we're kind of like the island of misfits. Sometimes when the General Assembly doesn't know where to stick something, they give me the opportunity and pleasure to figure it out. So hope you all have a safe summer. Support your county fairs. They've been through a tough couple of years. Some of them we didn't think were going to survive. We have 90 of them this year, 90 of them leading up to an amazing Kentucky State Fair. And so support your 4-H, FFA chapters, Locust Trace, etc. It really is cool to see kids learn about leadership and responsibility by taking care of animals. It's really cool. Thank you all. Thank you.